Christian parenting.
One of the biggest decisions that we make is where and how our kids will go to school. It shapes their friendships, their beliefs, and their worldview. And let's face it, it is overwhelming. Public school, private school, homeschool, the choices are endless. And that's why Christian Parenting created the School Simplified digital guide. Packed with insightful articles, podcasts, and videos, this free resource helps you make confident, faith-filled decisions about your child's schooling. You do not have to figure this out alone. God is with you, and so is Christian Parenting. So you can head to the Christian Parenting store to grab your free copy of School Simplified, and let's simplify school decisions together. That's christianparenting.org/store to get your free School Simplified digital guide. As Christian parents, we all want to be praying for our kids, but sometimes knowing what to pray can be really hard. And that's why Christian Parenting created A Great Cloud of Witnesses prayer journal to help busy parents just like you and me intentionally pray for your child and their faith all year long. This weekly journal walks through the lives of faithful men and women through Scripture, people like Abraham, Sarah, Moses, and Rahab, people who trusted an extraordinary God. It helps you pray boldly for your kids to follow in their footsteps, grow in character, deepen their faith, and trust God's plan. And as a bonus, every Monday on the Pardon the Mess podcast, Courtney DeFay will be praying through the journal with you, so you are never doing it alone. You can visit cpgive.org and use the code CLOUD to get your special podcast listener discount. That's cpgive.org and use the code CLOUD. I cannot wait to pray with you this year. Hey everyone, welcome to the Christian Parenting Podcast, where we help you grow into the parent God made you to be. I'm your host, Steph Thurling, and each week we bring you conversations that encourage, equip, and remind you that you are not alone on this parenting journey. Today, I'm joined by Ginny Yurich. She's a homeschooling mom of 5 and founder of the 1,000 Hours Outside movement. We're covering a lot of topics today: homeschooling, Ginny's new book, the power of outdoor living for your child's development, why boredom is actually a gift, and how to parent with confidence in a culture that's so full of pressure. So whether you homeschool or not, this conversation will really challenge and encourage you to make space for wonder, creativity, and growth in your family's everyday life. And if you really resonate with this, go check out Ginny's new book, Homeschooling, You're Doing It Right Just by Doing It. I will have links and show notes to find it. Thank you so much and enjoy. Hi, Ginny. Welcome to the Christian Parenting Podcast.
Thanks for having me. That's such a great name. It's like so clear what it is.
It is, we went back and forth on a few names, and that's what we came down to. Is no one's going to be confused about what they're getting when they go to the Christian Parenting Podcast.
So great.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad to have you here. So thank you for joining me. For people who don't know you, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and then tell us about your family too? Because we're Christian Parenting and we care a lot about families over here.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm a mom, and that's mainly what I do. We have 5 kids. They are currently ages 8 to 16. So we are that's a pretty sweet spot of ages, Steph. It's like someone can drive, so that's great. If you need someone to run to the store or kind of just fill in those gaps. So that's incredible. And nobody's in diapers. So I don't even know when everyone goes to the bathroom. And wow, what a stage this is. We live in Michigan in a little hobby farm. We've been here about 5 years, grew up in the suburbs. And we're a little outside the Ann Arbor, Michigan area, which is where the University of Michigan is. We are a homeschooling family, which is one of the best decisions that we have ever made as a family. And we do not regret it for 1 second. I'm also the founder of a global movement. It's called 1,000 Hours Outside, which has been around for quite a while, but not popular for as long as it's been around. At the beginning, it was kind of considered weird, especially by my friends. And now, though, it's gone around the world, and it's just a simple message. It's not super easy to implement, but it's a simple message that if we are intentional about hands-on living, and especially hands-on living outside, it really changes everything. It changes things for our family dynamic. It changes things for child development. And it really is an answer to a lot of the modern day parenting problems. So we have got a retail brand. We have got a podcast, a top-ranked podcast app, a top-ranked app. And I've got a lot of books that I've written, and I speak around the country on that. Just that simple thing of returning to sort of an old-fashioned childhood, but for the sake of actually preparing kids for the future.
That's just a lot. You're very busy.
I'm any busier than anybody else. I mean, the Bible
we're
talks
all
about,
busy.
the Bible talks about just, do today. Give us this day our daily bread. And the Bible talks about, not worrying. Each day has enough trouble of its own. And so that's what we try and do. We try and give each day our full effort emphatically. And it seems to work out.
Yeah. Yeah. And your kids are at a great age. I don't have a 16-year-old. My oldest is 13. But there are so many times that I've told my husband, I'm like, can we just teach them to drive like a little bit?
Yeah. People kind of freak out about it because I think they feel sad. It's a big milestone and off they go. And I was like, this is fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, they're supposed to get more independence, right? Like that's the goal.
Yeah.
I think that's what I hear is independence is the goal, but it is hard. Yeah. I know. I'm like, if you could just run to the store for me, or even just like pull my car out of the way for your, like he'll be playing basketball and my car will be in the way. And I'm like, can't you just move it? But he can't because he can't drive. But it would be nice.
Or like, okay, if you're at the store and it starts to downpour and your car is way at the back of the parking lot, like you can send your kid to go get it. It is like top notch. It's one of my favorite things that's ever happened.
I think you're the only person I've ever met that has said that, but that gives me a lot of encouragement.
Yeah,
people usually really freak out because it is kind of scary to give them a vehicle.
Yeah, but they practice for a long time, and
that's true.
There's all sorts of there's different segments they have to take. We felt pretty good about it.
I remember when I started learning to drive, the very first time I actually got in the car with my mom, we were just in the neighborhood, and I got so excited when the car door automatically locked because it meant I went over like 10 miles an hour. So
there you go. There is something about it. I remember the first time I drove by myself. And you just feel like, my goodness, I could go anywhere. And I do think that sense of independence and that sense of an internal locus of control matters a lot for kids. And a lot of kids are missing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're going to cover that a little bit as we continue our conversation. So we actually recently did a whole series on school choice and had spent a lot of time talking about different schooling options, homeschooling included. And I think it's just so interesting how homeschooling is on the rise in popularity. Like more and more people are doing it. More and more people are seeing the benefits. So I'm excited to touch on it again today. And I just love, so your latest book is Homeschooling. You're doing it right just by doing it. And I love the subtitle.
That's it. And the main title is just homeschooling.
Yeah. Kind of like the Christian Parenting podcast. Yes, you know what you're getting.
Exactly. What is this about? Well,
yeah, it's about homeschooling. Yeah. But I think so many of us need to hear you're doing it right just by doing it for a lot of parenting. So
for sure. Yeah. And I think a lot of the things that we'll talk about really extend into every choice that parents make. It has to do with the time that you do have the choice to make. It's afternoons, it's the weekends, it's, maybe taking a trip during the school year and saying, it's all right if they miss some things. We're going to skip some of that homework. It's really a broader topic of how we raise children and how much we trust children and how much time we give them to let it be their own.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start with I feel like in general, there's a lot of pressure and messages about what their kids should be doing. And I think there's a lot of pressure around school too and education. So how can parents discern what's best for their own family and then push back against some of that pressure that we feel?
So this is, I think, a really, really great time to be a parent, Steph, because everyone can look around them and see what's going on. Whereas in the past, you may not have been able to have so much insight, but everybody can look around them and see, AI is probably going to change a whole lot of things. In fact, it already is. There's companies that are laying off 8,000 employees today, 4,000 employees tomorrow. By 2027, we're going to reduce our workforce by X amount. So everybody can see that that's happening and everybody can start to extrapolate and to use their common sense as to what that might look like for their children in the future, which is this is a future that they're stepping into. And what we have as a situation, I think is wonderful, is that what differentiates us from AI and from machines and from robots is our humanity. So we actually are in this situation where the jobs of the future are relational. The jobs of the future are problem solving. The jobs of the future require flexibility. They require creativity. They require grit. They require the ability to take risk, to learn from failure, the ability to see what's needed and jump in and do that thing. So the statistics are something like the average kid today will have 7 careers in a lifetime. That's careers, not jobs. 12 to 24 jobs, 7 careers. That's a lot of people you're interacting with. That's a lot of bosses. That's a lot of coworkers. Entrepreneurship is on the rise dramatically. Something like 75% of everyone by 2035 will either be an entrepreneur or someone who is dipping their hands in a bunch of different hats. So when you take a look at that and everybody can see it, nobody is exempt. Everybody knows, okay, things are changing. We can use that to inform how we parent. And what happens is when we step back to those things that sort of seem old-fashioned or seem like they're kind of a waste of time, those are the places where we learn the skills that we need for the future. So it's really a win-win-win. It's a situation where kids can really enjoy their childhood as it's meant to be, as God made it. God biologically made them to self-educate, to have this internal drive to play, to build relationships, to live hands-on, to learn new things, to grow with all the things that they're interested in. God made them that way. So we don't have to subvert it. And when we encourage that, then they become more self-reliant and self-directed. So that makes parenting easier. And then it sets them up for the future.
Everything you said was so good. Just like the end.
It's just
We're good.
Common sense.
Yeah, no, but it's so true. And there's so much of what you're saying is just a matter of letting them slow down a little bit. Like we're in such a rush and everything is such a competition. And we always want to be the best and have the best for our kids, because we love them so much. But if we step back, maybe the best thing for our kids is to live outside the box a little bit and to slow down. How do we do that as parents, though? How do we resist that rush? How do we create a slower life, a more intentional rhythm so that kids can do all those things?
Well, you could try 1,000 hours outside. That would be one thing that I would suggest. I mean, that really is why it answers so many of the problems. We are intentional about getting outside for a certain amount of time in the year. And what that does is it forces a slowdown. It's a daily reminder of we infusing our life with time for the kids that is their own, that they get to grapple with and use how they will. Whether you do it that way or you just say there's 3 hours every day where we don't fill it and the kids get to fill it with what they want to fill it with, Legos or reading, art, whatever that is. And what happens is slowly, Steph, in time, you start to see very clearly that kids are competent, that they can fill their time with things that are worthwhile to them and that they can grow on their own without us having to impose. Because the problem is if you step off of a conveyor belt type system, which that is what the public school system is, no offense at all to any teacher. They are loving and doing a wonderful job with these kids. It's this system that is very assembly line-ish. And that's sort of what it was designed to do. It was designed to send people into the factories. Well, the factories don't exist anymore. So if you are growing up in this sort of assembly line system where first grade looks like second grade and second grade prepares you for third grade and middle school to high school and high school to college, and then what? And then what? So you have no guidance. It's like you fall off a cliff. Everything has been for 15 years, possibly 12 years, possibly. You have been sort of told what to do. And then all of a sudden, there's nobody there telling you what to do. And you're entering a world of 7 careers. So it's not a situation where you say, oh, I'm going to join at the bottom of this company. I'm going to work there for 30 years. I'm going to get a pension. I'm going to retire with health benefits. That doesn't exist anymore. So this open-ended time is very valuable for our children. And it's just a matter of saving the space on the calendar. It's a matter of saying our kids deserve some. And so we are going to make sure that we do not take it all.
Yeah. Okay. So 2 things kind of off that. First, I want to talk about a little bit homeschool and how that relates to that, and then move into some of the boredom a little bit more. But how do you feel like homeschool is the answer to all of that? Like, I feel like you've touched on it a little bit, but just practically, what are some of the things that kids are getting if they're at home that will help them with that? Like all of a sudden you're 18 and you're going to have 7 different.
Well, practically, they're getting so many things that they need for this type of a world because actually, honestly, because of the deficits, the things that seem like deficits. So when I was a public school teacher and I did some substitute teaching as well. So I had my hands in a lot of different grades and situations. I got to see a lot of different types of classrooms. But the basic gist of being a teacher is that you run that tight ship because it can become chaotic very, very quickly. So you have plans, you have transitions, you have an opener and a closer. It's almost like, it's an exhausting job. Props to all the teachers. It is such an exhausting job. I felt like a circus performer. You have to keep everybody's attention. You got to try and move them through this curriculum that they absolutely do not want to do. But at the basis of it, the child is not involved at all. The child doesn't decide what's going on. The child doesn't decide the lesson plan. The child doesn't decide the scope and sequence. The child shows up and is told what to do. Well, in a homeschool situation, a mother or a father or grandma's filling in for a little bit or whoever, you do not have the capacity as one person, as a parent, to fill the day like that, to have an opening song and transitions. And for an 8-hour day, you just don't. And so what happens because of what seems like a deficit is there's open space. The homeschool day just provides a lot of space that's not taken up and adult directed. So that just happens naturally. Another thing that happens naturally is that kids have to fill in. I just had a book launch. We've got kids that are a little bit older. So I'm on this podcast. I'm talking to this person. There's a little bit of a busier season. This happens in every family. You're taking care of grandma. She's not feeling well. You just had a baby. You had a job loss. You're transitioning. You move. Kids have to step in. And so some of our kids are making a dinner. They're making a lunch. All of these types of things that they're joining in sort of just due to the fact that we are limited people. They have a lot of opportunity to engage in multi-age interaction, which is a huge deal. These are their peers that they're going to be marrying within this age group, that they're going to be roommates with, that they're going to be coworkers with, that they're growing up together. And the fact that we siphon kids off with all 8-year-olds, it cuts us off. We need to learn from those who are older. We need to learn how to be empathetic when we are surrounded with those who are younger. Toddlers are going to let you know how they feel. A toddler is a blessing. It's hard to homeschool with a toddler. However, those are the times when kids are learning empathy and learning how to pay attention to somebody else's emotion and learning how to flex. So there are so many things that are happening solely because a child is in the home. They are exposed to adult modeling. How do we, depending on your situation, how do we build our own business? We have got a family business. How do we craft a life? How do we do a meal plan? How do we do our finances? How do we grocery shop? All of those things matter. And a kid gets a front row seat to their parent and to the other adults that are in their social community.
And it's kind of like a forced independence, which I think like the homeschool community has gotten kind of a bad rap for, because people like hear that and they're like, oh, you're putting too much on kids. When the reality is you're giving them a gift to teach them how to meal plan. And so, but I do feel like there's been a cultural switch where people kind of, gave it a kind of a bad rap for that because they wanted to do everything for their kids. And I think people are starting to see the benefits of that.
So if someone wanted to see the other side, then I would recommend this book. It's called What Time is Noon by Chip Layton. And he was a career guy, worked in corporate America, and he started to post online text messages that he got from his teenagers that were kind of just ridiculous. We're in a new era, right, where kids can text their parents. And he started to sort of be this person, this hub, where people would say, oh my goodness, my kid texted me this. And so he just recently came out with this book called What Time is Noon. He left corporate America to do this full time as a comedian. But the book is funny, but also pretty wild and eye-opening, where kids are saying, I'm at the store. Where do I buy the pasta water? If I use eggs, if I use eggs from 2 different containers, will my food taste weird? And, he's had ones from college students where a college student texts a parent and says, how do I get my clothes out of the washing machine? Do I just use my hands? And so that's funny, but it's not really funny. And the professors are saying the same thing, that the kids are showing up and they can't even make simple decisions without texting their parents. So if we want to raise kids who can independently and successfully and feel good about it, enter into the adult world, they have to start young with independence. And in other cultures, Michaeline Duclef wrote a phenomenal book called Hunt, Gather, Parent, where she talked about as soon as that kid can walk, they're involved in what the family is doing. And that is what gives them a sense of self-control. It gives them a sense of self-esteem. It gives them their family membership card. I'm a part of something. And there are psychologists that are saying it's this lack of self-control. If someone is doing everything for me, I don't feel like I'm a competent person, that's contributing to a lot of the anxiety and depression.
Yeah. And that all makes sense. And that's how we used to always do life before, again, the Industrial Revolution. And we needed to get people to factories and all these things. Like kids are just part of the family contributing. And that's how they learned. And so I think that is just such a blessing that homeschool families have that. And I think even my kids are in school, but I do think that we homeschooled for 1 year, but I respect the homeschoolers and I really do try to learn from them. Like, okay, so how can I foster some of that independence in my kids and give them a little more ownership of the things that they're doing? Because I think it's so important and it's really easy to take it away from them. Because it's way easier to do everything for them.
Well, because a low sense of control causes anxiety. And so that's true for both kids and parents. So when you don't feel like you're in control as a parent, and especially in a rapidly changing world, this is a really uncertain, scary time. And so a lot of times when things are uncertain and scary, we tend to double down on control because we feel uncertain and we feel anxious. But the problem is that our kids also feel anxious when they don't have a sense of control. And so it's almost a situation where you have to choose them.
Yeah.
Look, one of us is going to feel anxious. It's either going to be me or it's going to be you. And as a parent, I would rather take on the bulk of that anxiety than have my kid do it. And then what happens is over time, it lessens. That's why we had no issues. I mean, sending our kid out into the world, he's going to drive. He's got an internship. We'd had a lot of years of practice. It mattered quite a bit. And it showed up then. And I feel fairly confident that he's just going to soar in his life, our oldest, who's getting really close to graduating. And I think that comes from a decade plus of passing the baton and allowing some freedom.
Yeah, I think that's so true because I do feel like my worst seasons of parenting where I'm like, wow, this has not been a good week or couple weeks or whatever is when I feel out of control. Is when I like really tighten the reins and then the kids respond to that. And we just get into this cycle of who's trying to control what. And it never works out. Never works.
Right.
But we try anyway.
And they have a good internal system. And that's the thing that's really tricky to remember. They learned how to crawl on their own. They didn't know how to talk, but they learned how to do that. And so they have this internal, God made them that way. They have this internal part of them that drives them on to grow and to master skills and then to move on to something harder. And so it's tricky. It's tricky to sit on our hands, but that's part of the job of a parent.
Yeah, 100%.
As parents, we all want our kids to do well in school and feel really confident. Maybe you have a child who's struggling with a specific subject and needs a little extra help, or maybe your child is ahead and wants to really challenge themselves, or maybe you're like me and you just want to avoid the summer slide and head back to school strong in the fall. If you can relate to any of those things, you need to look into IXL. IXL is an online learning program that enriches your curriculum, whether it's homeschool or in-school curriculum. It offers practice in math, English language arts, science, and social studies while adapting to each child, meeting them exactly where they are. Plus, IXL encourages students to be curious and empowers them to choose how they learn. We have used IXL at our house for all of my kids, and it's been really helpful. We used it as a supplement to our math curriculum when we homeschooled, and then we used it for extra practice before tests too. So one of my friends has her son do some IXL work before math tests so that she can see that he has the material mastered. I thought that was a great idea, so we have done that too. Everything on IXL is organized by grade, subject, topic, and subtopic, making it really simple to find activities for the exact skills that you're covering. IXL is trusted by 15 million students worldwide and has been proven to improve performance in over 75 scientific research studies. That's amazing. You can make an impact on your child's learning and get IXL now. And Christian Parenting Podcast listeners get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXL.com/today. Again, you can visit IXL.com/today to get the most effective learning program out there at the very best price. If you're a woman, so much of your health starts with your hormones. When your hormones are off, everything else is off too, including things like your digestive issues, mood, mental clarity, energy levels, weight management, and so much more. But Hormone Harmony is a game changer for women who are struggling with hormonal imbalances that leave them just exhausted, physically and mentally. It only contains science-backed ingredients that bring back comfort, energy, clarity, confidence, and a sense of balance. Happy Mammoth is the company that produces Hormone Harmony, and it is famous for its zero compromise policy. That means no GMOs, artificial fillers or flavors, or any other junk. Only science-backed ingredients in amounts that are clinically proven. The company, they surveyed 1,831 women to see how Hormone Harmony helped them, and the results are mind-blowing. So 86% of women started losing weight. 77% say it improved their mood, and 100% said that they were feeling like themselves again. Hormone Harmony, over that, has over 50,000 raving reviews from women all over the world, with 98% of them saying they'd gladly recommend it to their friends and family. You can try Hormone Harmony risk-free and get a 15% off your first order with code CPPodcast at checkout.
Okay, Okay, let's move back into boredom a little bit because, like I said, my kids are in school, but they're home for the summer. And so everyone whose kids are usually in school, everyone's home right now. It's summer. So, and I think boredom is really hard, especially in today's world. For a lot of the same reasons we've already been talking about is we like to structure our kids. We like to keep them busy. We want them to follow this like track. So we've kind of talked about why kids need boredom, but like how can parents kind of stop feeling guilty about boredom, whether it's feeling bad that their kids are bored or that they're busy?
You have to look at it like it's a gift. It is a gift. You have to change your mindset. And you may have to pick up some books that remind you that. There's a really good book. It's called, what is it called? It's called Beyond Winning by a man named Kim John Payne and Luis Fernando Llosa. And it's about toxic youth sports culture. Now, I read it before our kids were entering into any of the sports things, before travel, any of that. And I read it because I like Kim John Payne. So I thought, well, this book isn't really going to apply to me too much, but I like Kim John Payne, so I'm going to read the book. And the book is really phenomenal. And it talks in there a lot about boredom. And they say when your kids are bored, you have not failed. There are a lot of books that would talk about that boredom is the bridge from nothing to creativity. And of course, again, in this day and age, when there's not going to be a script, Leonard Sachs calls it the middle class script. He says the middle class script is you go to school, you go to college, and you get a good job, and you have a good life. And he says the problem with the middle class script is that it's wrong. That's it. It doesn't always work. And there are a lot of things that can contribute to it not working. One being the changing job market. That's one. But he said sometimes kids don't get into the college that they want. They can't afford it. There's a lot of issues there. So we're in a situation where we are going to have to create our own lives. We have to make our own paths. We have a lot of things that entertain us that basically make it so that we don't have to have any creativity. I talked to this college professor who said that kids are coming to college now and they can't form any mental pictures. So, for example, if you would read a storybook to a child of the purple unicorn flew across the sky. And if you're listening, you would think that in your head, a picture of a purple unicorn flies across the sky. And he said that kids can't even form that mental imagery because they've spent their whole childhood consuming someone else's creativity instead of drawing it out of themselves. So boredom is a gift. And once again, I think if you sit back and think about it critically, you're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. What do you have to do to preserve it? You have to be intentional. You have to be confident that it's okay that your kid isn't in 16 camps this summer, even though the neighbor kid is. You have to be confident in that. And you also have to have a few skills to help yourself move through that. I'm bored, because that is irritating and grating. And you already are feeling a little guilty because the neighbor kid's at camp and your kid isn't. So some of the skills, they come out of the Love and Logic books, which are fantastic. They say, have a phrase that you say that's empathetic. Be empathetic. They're bored. It can be hard to be bored. Be empathetic, but be a broken record. It's okay to be bored. It's okay to be bored. You know, you just have a couple, it's okay to be bored. You be boring yourself and then they go find something to do. You could say boredom is the bridge between nothing and creativity. You know, kids get so irritated. They're like, that's so cheesy. But like, you say it over and over again. We say, you know, when our kids are like, well, I'm hungry. We always just go, hunger is the best seasoning. Hunger is, and they're like, stop. We're so sick of it. And then they go find something to do. Or you say, that's great because I need all these socks matched. And I'm so glad you have nothing to do because I have a lot of chores and you could really help me out. They're going to run away. Off they go. They're going to find something to do. Angela Hanscom is a pediatric occupational therapist, and she says it can take up to 45 minutes for kids to develop a play scheme. That's a long time. 45 minutes is a long time to sit through. I'm bored. I don't know what to do. But you have to wait it out. And then eventually they're going to pull from their own inner resources, and they're going to be a kid who grows into an adult that has mental imagery and can figure out what to do.
That mental imagery thing is so alarming. But it's
because, if you think about, like, for my own self, one of my favorite parts of life is reading. I love to read as an adult, and I love to read fiction and nonfiction. But if you're reading a story, so that person, if someone becomes an adult and they don't have the capacity for mental imagery, you've taken away an entire lifetime of really enjoying books.
I hate that.
Yeah.
Like, I hate everything.
It's pretty awful. Can you imagine? I mean, think about the books that you've read in your life that you love.
Yeah.
And they're such a great part of of life.
So very practically, again, when your kids are bored, what are some things that you have seen from them that have really helped them, like, step away from boredom into creativity? Like, have you seen that in your own kids?
Well, I mean, we don't even hardly have the issues anymore, right? Because they're older. But when they're littler, I mean, you just have stuff around. You have spirograph and you have yarn and you have art materials. You have a little pool. You have a hose. A hose will do wonders. And they just eventually find things. Ideally, you have some friends around if you can make that happen, either in your neighborhood or inviting kids over. Once again, that Angela Hanscom talks about having full day play dates. Play dates didn't used to be a thing. It was like you just went and knocked on your neighbor's door and you found who could play in the neighborhood, and you had an expanse of time. And the expanse of time allows for more boredom. It allows for sort of those rough edges where someone wants to play something that you don't want to play and you have to negotiate, which is a really huge skill. The jobs of the future are relational. And so you have to have those skills of how to deal with people and how to be assertive, but not too assertive, how to be empathetic, all of those types of things. So if you can include friends in the mix, that really helps to cut down the boredom. But you just have some stuff around. You have some books, you can have some suggestions, but overall, you can trust that they're going to figure it out.
Yeah. We have just like this bin on my dining room table. And to be totally honest, it's driving me crazy. And there's puff paint involved, which makes me very nervous because I'm like, that's not coming out if you get it on our fabric chairs. But for days now, my daughter has been making all these little contraptions, and there are pipe cleaners in there. So she keeps bringing me pipe cleaner butterflies, different colors every time. And she's making these like bracelets out of ribbon she found with puff paint with all her friends' names on them. And I'm like, it's great. It's keeping her entertained for hours, but you have to let go of the mess a little bit.
Yeah. And think about...
Not that you have to be okay with puff paint. You can put some plastic down.
And you can start to really take a step back and once again, sort of use your critical thinking and think, okay, well, she's learning how to be generous. She's learning what her friends like. She's learning what color combinations go good together. That's a job. If someone down the road wants to have an interior designer, I don't think they want a robot to show up at their door. I think they want a person who's going to come in and say, you know what, this looks good with that. And she's working on her fine motor skills, right? So all that puff paint, that is actually doing a whole lot for school prep. In terms of getting ready for the next school year, you don't really need the worksheets, right? You're pressing. Those puff paint bottles are actually hard to squeeze.
Yeah,
hard to make really accurate. I remember that as a kid. They're so fun. But there is a lot of learning going on, even in the things that seem like a messy, chaotic situation.
Yes, that is such a good reminder. And I mean, for me and for probably everyone listening, that like all those things can just be reframed. Yeah. Like that's all it is reframing it into something my kid's learning, or this is a skill set. Even though it would be just like, I would love to clean it up.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the part of parenting where you pass the baton and you remember that someday there's going to be no more puff paint and you're going to be sad.
Oh, I'll be so sad when there's no more puff paint. So the puff paint stays out. And that's just real. I get that for sure. So what like final encouragement would you have for parents who are listening and are just thinking about all the things that we've already talked about?
I would say if you're leaning toward homeschooling and it's something that's on your heart, I would say to take the leap. I think in general in life, you have to just go for it. And that's the season of life, the situation of life that we're in, is that you make decision and you iterate. And when I say you're doing it right just by doing it, that doesn't mean that every single day is perfect. That doesn't even mean that every week or every month or even a year. You may have a year that was like, that one didn't really feel good. That felt off and we're going to adjust. But that is really what life is. So over the course of a childhood, you're doing it right because you are doing all of these things that help prepare a child with the childhood that prepares them for adulthood. And I think that is really an amazing thing that we can pass on to our kids, that life is not static, that we have the capacity to seek God's will and to seek God's wisdom. If anybody lacks wisdom, he can ask of God, who gives liberally without fault finding. What a verse. What a verse. You're like, gosh, I really have been messing up. I'm stinking at this mothering thing or homeschooling thing or whatever the situation is. Without finding fault, God will give you wisdom. And so you have to go with what the Holy Spirit is guiding you to do for your family. You know what that is. And there is a section of Stephen Pressfield's book. It's called The War of Art, where he says fear is your guide. Fear actually, I think a lot of times in the Christian circle, we talk about feeling peace. Like, I don't really feel peace about it. I feel nervous. But he says, no, the nerve, the fear, they're telling you what you should do. And that's the direction you should go. And then things open up and you You can never know. And so I sit here just as some random mother. I was a high school math teacher. I would be retiring in the next 2 years with a pension and healthcare, and I have none of that. But I'm sitting here talking to you, and God opens doors. So the Bible says that the word is a lamp unto our feet. It's a light unto our path. And that means you just get a couple steps. Wouldn't it be lovely if we could get 5 years down the road? But on the other hand, that's kind of boring too. Mm-hmm. It's kind of amazing to have things that you don't know what's going to happen. Our brains are wired for novelty, and the screen manufacturers know that. And that's why they have all the swipes and the notifications. But God provides us novelty too in his creation, in the way that we live our lives. So I would suggest that you do what the Holy Spirit is guiding you to do. You be brave, even if it's different than what your neighbors are doing, or even if you come from 16 generations of teachers in your family and they're all going to judge you. You have to do what's best for your family and trust that God is going to work it out for you and for your kids.
Yeah, that's good. You've listed so many resources through this entire podcast. So I'm going to make sure that I'm going to go, first of all, I'll read them all for myself. And then I'll get them all in show notes too. But tell us where we can find you and your book and your podcast, just so I can make sure everyone follows you.
My thing's easy. Everything is 1,000 Hours Outside. We have a website. I'm on social media. We have an app, that 1,000 Hours Outside app, and the podcast is the same, the 1,000 Hours Outside podcast. It is the #2 parenting podcast in the entire country, which is unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. I'm just like a random mom over here with like a messy house and piles of laundry and what we just had like leftovers for lunch and all of that type of thing. The books, I have 2 books that are the most recent, and the most recent one is called Homeschooling. You're doing it right just by doing it. I believe it wholeheartedly. You can get it wherever you buy your books. And the book that came out before that is called Until the Streetlights Come On, which is kind of like how a return to yesteryear. Kids used to have a lot of freedom, and they'd play, and the sign to come back in was that the streetlights would come on. There was no GPS car watches. No one was really yelling. No one was even paying attention to where they were. Starting often at age 4 or 5, pretty young, kids were out with a lot of freedom. And this return to play makes today better. We get to enjoy our kids more and build all these memories and let them build all these memories, but it also prepares them for the future. So that one's called Until the Streetlights Come On. And I think they both will change your life.
Yeah, no, they're both very, very good. And I would agree with that. And congratulations on your podcast, because I have seen it up on the charts consistently. And that's amazing and such an accomplishment.
Thank you. It's really fun. What a gift, and that's sort of the type of thing where it's an example of what we've talked about. I didn't take a podcast class in high school because podcasting wasn't a thing. And the skills that I learned to like this and enjoy it came through downtime. It came through learning how to converse. I had a really good friend growing up that was really good at asking questions. And I remember feeling really seen by that and really cared for. And so it's a skill set that I tried to cultivate just from play with this friend. Her name is Beth. And then I like to read. And that also came from downtime. So it came from that. It didn't come from any class, didn't come from any instructor, didn't come from any adult.
And who knew that would be a job? My kids sometimes
we don't know.
Yeah. We don't know what our kids are going to be able to do, because they're like, so part of your job is just like reading books and then talking to people about the books.
Correct. That is the job.
Yeah.
I talked to this man, Austin Kleon, recently, who wrote some fabulous books. It's called Steal Like an Artist. It's a set of 3 books. Steal Like an Artist, Show Your Work and Keep Going. And he says, I'm a professional reader.
The ideal job.
But people don't really read that much anymore either. Yeah. So you just don't know. We don't know what the jobs are. They're always changing. There aren't bowling pin setters anymore. I mean, that used to be a job. There's so many jobs that don't exist. And so those soft, what people refer to as soft skills, as opposed to, knowing every equation and all that kind of stuff, doesn't matter quite as much. The other things are really going to set our kids ahead.
Yeah. And that's such an important reminder,
a message of hope
all the time.
Isn't it a message of hope? Because it's actually the easier route. I mean, wouldn't it be awful if it was like you have to have your kids keep up with AI? They're going to fall behind unless they keep up with AI. You'd be like, well, there's no hope. And that's so much stress and pressure. But actually the opposite is true. The jobs of the future are human. And that's great news.
That is good news. I think we all need to remind ourselves of that every couple days, so that we don't absolutely panic. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing with us. I appreciate it.
So thank you so much for having me. Thanks to everyone who listened in.
Thank you so much for joining us today on the Christian Parenting Podcast. I hope that Ginny's words inspired you to step outside, both literally and figuratively, as you trust God with your parenting journey. I have links to all of her things to connect with her in show notes, including a link to her book.
Until next time, may God bless you this week. May you feel confident in the decisions you're making for your family. May your kids grow in creativity and resilience. And may you always know that grace covers you as you grow together.
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.